In this series of ISS 2019 paper 2 solution, topic is statistical inference. Uh, our first question to discuss is let x1, x2, x3, xn be a random sample from a normal population mu theta, and where theta is unknown, then the statistics t summation xi minus mu square is sufficient or complete. We need to check that. Here theta is the only parameter which is unknown and mu is known to us. So it is one parameter family, but it is exponential family or not? For that we need to go through one result. This is the result from Kessler-Berger book, theorem number 6.2.25. I have PDF of this book, and if you have original you can see from that. Complete statistics in exponential family. First of all, if you have more than one parameter like theta 1, theta 2, theta k, then if likelihood for an observation, if your likelihood for an observation can be written in this particular form, then your family is called k parameter exponential family. What? K parameter exponential family. Now suppose your k equals to 1. So it means that you have only theta 1 parameter. Let us write theta 1, just theta. So if you have only one parameter, as we know in our question, then what we will write? We will write our likelihood as hx c theta exponential w theta or exponential w theta and tx. I am writing capital Tx. Then if you have only one parameter, then we can write this particular likelihood as this, because don't get confused in fx theta and L. They are writing f of x1, x2, xn given theta as L. Fine. So this is the form of one parameter exponential family. If your likelihood can be written in this form, then your problem is from one parameter exponential family. Our main concern is that these tjx's are complete for these theta 1, theta 2, theta k, and for one parameter exponential family, this tx is actually complete sufficient for this this theta parameter. So now we can move to our question. Your likelihood, that is equals to product of I1 to n f of xi, can be written as 1 upon theta raised to power n by 2, 1 upon 2 pi raised to power n by 2, and exponential minus of half summation xi minus mu, and particularly I can write mu naught if it is known to us, but it is okay if we write mu square upon theta square. So this is how your likelihood can be written. So see, this whole term 1 upon theta raised to power n by 2, 1 upon 2 pi raised to power n by 2 is your c theta. This is your c theta, and hx is equals to 1. Hx, what is hx here? H is a function of all random observations. Hx and tx both are the functions of random observations. So c theta is this term, hx equals to 1, and w theta equals to minus 1 upon 2 theta square, and tx equals to summation I 1 to n xi minus mu. So if our likelihood for this problem can be written in this form, then we know that tx is complete sufficient for theta, then our tx will be complete sufficient for this theta. So only this result will help us in solving this particular problem. Now second problem is, consider a random sample of size 64 from a normal population, mean, mu and standard deviation sigma. So sigma is unknown here. The computations obtained from the sample observations gives us x bar this, and summation xi minus x bar equals to 6300. The 95% confidence interval for mu is. See, we should remember the formula that 95% confidence interval can be obtained by the limits x bar plus minus t raised to power alpha by 2 s by root n. Then let us write confidence limits. Before that, let us calculate s. S equals to, actually s square equals to summation, it is actually 1 upon n minus 1 I 1 to n summation xi minus x bar whole square. So for us it is 6300 upon n minus 1, that is 63. So s square equals to 100 and then s equals to 10. So your 95% confidence limits will be, this is limits, x bar equals to 60.4 plus minus t alpha by 2. Here your confidence interval is 95%. So your the size of your critical region will be 0.05. Your alpha will be 0.0, this is 0.05, and then alpha by 2 equals to 0.025. Let us check the limits for this, the actual tabulated value for t alpha by 2. Now you can see this is tabulated value for t. This probability of t is greater than t nu alpha equals to alpha will give us this critical value. Here this is t n minus, this t is calculated at n minus 1 degrees of freedom. Here nu is equals to n minus 1. So here n minus 1 equals to 63. So for more than 30, the limits are given in this row. So our level of significance is 0.05. Then for degree of freedom more than 30, it is 1.96. So we will use 1.96. Then write it as 1.96 into s by root n. So s equals to 10 and root n equals to root of 64. This will give you 57.95 when you will subtract 1.96 into 10 upon root of 64 from 60.4, and if you will add up, then you will get 62.88. Now your next question is, let x be a random variable from normal mu sigma square population, and mu and sigma square are unknown, then which one of the following is a simple hypothesis? Your hypothesis is called simple only when all of your parameters are specified. So only B can be true. Here your sigma square is not specified, whether it is greater than sigma naught square or less than sigma naught square. Here your mu is not properly specified, because here mu can take any value from greater than mu naught, but there is no specific value for which we are here to test. And similar for this, so only option for which mu is specifically defined as mu naught and sigma square is defined as sigma naught square is only given in option number B. So option number B is correct. In this question it is given that x be a random variable from uniform 0 theta and critical region is also given to us. Then the size of the test is This is very simple question. See, if you want to test size, then size is represented by alpha, and it is probability of rejecting H naught. Means consider your critical region, that is x greater than 1. Probability x greater than 1 when H naught is true. So when H naught is true, then theta equals to 1, and when theta equals to 1, then your x is actually following 0 to 1. So your x is following uniform 0 to 1. So when your PDF is specified to you, then finding probability x is greater than 1 is not a big deal. So it is 1 to 0 to 1, which is impossible, because 1 to 1 integration of 1 dx will give us 0. So the actual answer of this question is 0. Now your next question is, let x and y be two independent random variables with uniform 0 theta, and we are testing hypothesis theta equals to 1 against theta equals to 2. The probability of type 1 error and power of the test based on the critical region x plus y 0.75 will be. So if you want, probability of type 1 error is nothing but this alpha. So alpha equals to probability of rejecting H naught, that is x plus y is greater than 0.75, or we can write 3/4. So for this probability we need to write, first of all we need to define under which hypothesis we are working. So it is 3/4 under H naught. So when H naught theta equals to 1, so x and y both are following uniform 0, 1. So when your PDF for your independent parameters are given to us, then it is not a hard task to find joint distribution. Joint distribution will be fxy equals to f of x and f of y, and for both x and y, f of x and f of y equals to 1, because x and y both are following uniform 0, 1. So your joint distribution is defined as 1. So let us write P naught when we are working under null hypothesis. We can write probability x plus y greater than 3/4 as 1 minus probability x plus y less than 3/4. Now this probability can be calculated as double integration, because whenever we calculate for a joint probability, then we use double integration, and double and joint density function, that is equals to 1. So first of all write do integration with respect to y, and then do integration with respect to x. So your y is going from 0 to 3/4 minus x, and your x is going from 0 to 3/4. Why I am taking these limits? It's an important question. See, your x is lying between 0 and 1, and your y is lying between 0 and 1. Now since we are taking the event that x plus y is less than 3/4, so no x or no y can be more than 3/4. So actually the upper limit of x and y should be 3/4, because we need to take the sum, we need to keep the sum less than 3/4. So none of your x and y can be more than 3/4. Fine. And so ultimate limit of your x will be from 0 to 3/4, and then y is taking limit from 0 to 3/4 minus x, because the minimum sum that x plus y can have is 0 when both are 0. So it is 0, it is always greater than 0. Then Now for y, since we know that minimum limit that y can have is 0, and we cannot say that y is that 3 by 4 is the most upper limit for this y. It has to be less than 3 by 4 minus y by this inequality. When x plus y is less than 3 by 4, then when we take x from left hand side to the right hand side, then y is less than 3 by 4 minus x. We can also understand it by graph. See, this is your line x plus y equals to 3 by 4, and we need to keep your sum less than 3 by 4. Then this is your required area. So your y is going from, let me change the color, your y is going from, moving on this strip. So your y is moving from 0 to this point. This point is what? 3 by 4 minus x, because on this line y equals to 3 by 4 minus x. So this is why I am taking limit 0 to 3 by 4 minus x. Now when you will calculate this probability, this integration, then you will find that probability is 0.93. So this is 0.93, sorry, 0.72. And in similar way, when you will do it for power, for calculating power, what is power? Probability of rejecting H0 when your H1 is true. So when your H1 is true, your xy will follow uniform 0, 2, and then fxy will change to 1 upon 2 into 1 upon 2, that is 1 upon 4. So in this place write 1 by 4, and the whole process will be the same. These limits will be the same. This 1 minus whole integration will be same. Only replace 1 by 4, and then you will get 0.93. So this is how your question need to be solved. Your question number 16, to obtain a critical reason in a testing of hypothesis, we need to distribution of a test statistics under H0 and without any assumption under H1, all of the above. See, whenever we need to find a critical point, first of all we decide that X, this is your critical reason. See, if C is equals to X such that X belonging to Wx, this is your critical reason. Then how do we find critical points? We find critical point by using power of the size of the test, and size of the test equals to alpha, we have discussed before, which is probability X is belonging to Wx under H0. So under H0 we always find our critical points. And what are the critical points? When your critical reason is somehow defined as some statistics Tx is greater than C1, or sub statistics Tx is less than C2, one-sided, and it may be two-sided, that C1 is in between Tx and Tx is in between C and C2. So any of the type, any of these types can be the reason for our critical for rejecting the null hypothesis. So these C1, C2 are critical points which we find by using size of the probability for rejecting H0 when H0 is true. It is nothing but alpha. So under H0 we find our cutoff points or critical points. These are called cutoff points because if you see that if this is your whole reason, that is, I am not making a normal curve, I am just making the whole reason in which your observations are lying. then if we want that this region is our this region should be our critical region, then these are called critical points. This is for two-sided rejection. Understand, this is only for two-sided rejection, this type. So these are the cutoff points which cut off the region under which we will reject the hypothesis, or we are failed to reject the hypothesis. So this is why these C1 C2 are called cutoff points, because they cut the region of exception and region of rejection. Now this question number 38 is can be written as, see, question number 38 says let x1 x2 xn be IID random variable with normal theta 1, then expected value of x bar given x1 is. So expected value of x bar given x1, so x1 will take of course a value x, that is equals to expected value of x1 plus x2 by 2 given x1 equals to x, which is equals to 1 by 2 expected value of x1 plus expected value of x2, sorry, it should be written as expected value of x1 given x1 equals to x plus expected value of x2 given x1 equals to x. When x1 is some constant quantity, then x1 it is nothing but expected value of some constant, and x1 and x2 are independent, then expected value of x2 given x1 is actually expected value of x2. So it is nothing but x plus theta. So this x is actually for all, if we write for general, then it is x1 plus theta by 2. So answer should be D. Now your question number 68, which says let x1 x2 be IID random variable with normal theta 1, then the number of unbiased estimator of theta. See, this question is very easy. You know that expectation of x1 equals to theta and expectation of x bar equals to theta. Now you can make an estimator t equals to alpha x1 plus 1 minus alpha x bar, where alpha is belonging to real number, and since alpha is belonging to real number, and since alpha can take infinite values from this R, and then if your alpha is taking infinite values from real numbers, then t there are infinite possibilities for this t estimator, and you can easily check that expectation of t is theta, because alpha theta plus 1 minus alpha theta equals to theta. So this is unbiased and infinite parameter for theta. Now question number 70 says x1 x2 x3 xn be a random sample of size n from Bernoulli P distribution, then UMVUE of 1 upon P will be. You can easily see that expected value of x bar. First of all, if x1 x2 xn are n Bernoulli P variate, then summation of xi is binomial NP variate. Fine. So expected value of x bar will be NP upon n, that is P. So it is unbiased estimator of P, not 1 upon P. So x bar cannot be UMUE, and since summation x let y equals to summation of xi, then if we find 1 upon expectation of 1 upon y to check unbiasedness, because UMVUE should be unbiased, so it will be summation x 0 to n 1 upon y n c 1 minute expected value of 1 upon y should be summation y from 0 to n 1 upon y n c y p raised to power y q raised to power n minus y. Let us multiply and divide by p upon p. Multiply by p and divide by p. Then we can write 1 upon p summation y from 0 to n 1 upon y n c y p raised to power y plus 1 and q raised to power n minus y. Now this term will not be 1. Then we can say that this expectation of 1 upon y cannot be equal to 1 upon p. Now why this term will not be equal to 1? Let us express it. Summation y 0 to n 1 upon y and write it n factorial y factorial n minus y factorial. Then p raised to power y plus 1 q raised to power n minus y. Then we can write it like summation y 0 to n and 1 upon n and then 1 upon n plus 1 and here n plus 1. So it will be 1 upon n plus 1 and 1 upon y n plus 1. Now for making this term equals to 1, let us use the definition of actual binomial distribution. But here this is not equals to 1. Why? See, probability density function of binomial distribution is written as NCX, p raised to power x, q raised to power n minus x. In place of x, here y plus 1 is written, and in place of okay, rest of the things are okay. So here if it is y plus 1 and here it is n minus y, then here n should be n plus 1. Now see, if you want to prove that this is not equals to 1, then we need to do some transformations here. And what will be the transformation? See, let us write it like this. Summation y 0 to n minus 1 1 upon y n c y p raised to power y plus 1 q raised to power n minus y plus put n in place of y 1 upon n ncn p raised to power n plus 1 q raised to power I did not need to write this ncn p raised to power n plus 1. So this is equals to p raised to power n plus 1 upon n. Now